Welcome back, everybody, to Toronto Today here on the Parlay. I'm your host, Luca Rosano, alongside my co-host, Michael Singh, and we are back to break down Toronto sports and more. We got a busy slate to get to, and we're first going to start with the Maple Leafs. They not only beat the Kraken, they beat them pretty convincingly. They covered the puck line, they covered the point spread, and they won that game 6-2. And they finished off their West Coast swing with a much-needed win in Seattle. So this was as we expected it to go. I mean, you were bang on with over in goals. It did go over that 6 total goals scored. And this wasn't one of those wishy-washy type performances for the Leafs. This was a pretty dominant performance from start to finish as they were able to win this game convincingly. And you look at the Leafs now, got a little bit of momentum before the NHL trade deadline.
Yeah, it was a much needed win, as I wrote down there in the rundown. I think that's because the games against Calgary and Vancouver, they both ran into some hot goaltenders there, and they needed a performance that sort of reinstilled their confidence and reminded them how good of a team they are. And there's no better opponent than that right now than Seattle Kraken, who, I mean, they're really really bad. Like there's no way they should be in that game whatsoever. I was a little concerned when the Leafs kind of went up early and got that 2-goal lead after the first period, because I thought they might take their foot off the gas pedal a little bit and maybe allow the Kraken back into the game, but they kept going. And what a night from some of the guys. I mean, Mitch Marner, we'll talk about him more just now, but what a great night. Michael Bunting, another goal. David Kampf, Andre Casa, Alex Kerfoot, and Jake Muzzin all also got on the score sheet. Matthews and Nylander and Liljegren had 2 assists and another assist for John Tavares. So all around team effort. I like that Jack Campbell got one of those games as well where you know he's going to give your team a chance to win. I mean, he played all right. He wasn't really asked to do too much against Seattle, because obviously they're a way weaker side than Leafs have been accustomed to playing. So I think just a much needed, I don't want to call it night off, but a much needed win in a
Yeah.
convincing fashion against the team they should beat.
Yeah, you look at Mitch Marner, 3-point night. His last 11 games, 11 goals, 11 assists. He's been on an incredible run of form. And he registered his 400th point, becoming the fifth quickest Leaf to do so. So he's been playing really good hockey right now. And I mean, it's good to see the Maple Leafs, get this win after they did lose 2 games where you had some doubts and you had some questions about this team. But as we now look ahead to the NHL trade deadline, Mike, which is still a couple weeks away, it's on Monday, March 21st. Is there one glaring need that you want to see addressed from this team? And do you ultimately see the Leafs making a move to bolster this team into the second half of the season?
They're definitely going to make a move. The trade deadline is a little bit more than a month away, but knowing Kyle Dubas, he's a guy who likes to get his business done early. He's someone who, when he makes it an addition, he doesn't want them for just the last month and a half of the season. He wants them for the last 2.5 months, if so. I know the Leafs are playing with a lot of little cap issues, trying to maneuver the cap a little bit,
Yeah.
because the longer that you wait, the more cap space you actually accrue during an NHL season. So there might be some time that the Leafs just have to wait. But I would definitely like to see them go out and add at least one defenseman.
Yeah.
Sandy and Liljegren, they've done a serviceable job at the back there, but come playoff time, you need that depth and you need a kind of proven commodity. I think the biggest reason why they need someone back there is because Justin Hall hasn't been the Justin Hall who was on this team last season. I mean, this is a guy who they took a gamble on. They protected him in the expansion draft as opposed to Jared McCann, who, by the way, scored his 20th goal of the season last night for the Seattle Kraken, because they thought this guy would be a legitimate, quiet, top 4 guy who they can rely on night in, night out. And that definitely hasn't been the case. He's struggled a lot. He's a good character guy at least, but he's just not playing to the level or standard that he was last season. So I think they definitely need to go find someone to play alongside Jake Muzzin, and I'd still would like them to go add a little bit more grit into the lineup. We talked about it the other night against Calgary. They were kind of pushed around, shoved around. There was no one that would hold the Flames accountable. So I would like to see them add a piece like that can actually play. I know those ones are tough to come by, but I don't think Nick Ritchie or Kyle Clifford are necessarily those pieces that can help you do that. So if there's a guy out there who's a little bit better, a little bit more physical that they can go out and get and add to their top 12 forward group there, I wouldn't be opposed to that.
I agree with the defenseman. I think that's definitely going to be one of their biggest needs. How much do you think like their salary cap situation next season is going to hinder their ability to make a move? Because Kyle Dubas did come out and said his preference is to trade for a defenseman who's not on an expiring contract. So, are there any names you see that could potentially fit with the Leafs? I mean, this is a team too. They're no stranger to trading some draft picks if needed to get a deal done.
Yeah, no, they're definitely not shy to do that. I'm just looking here. They have their first and second rounder this year.
Yeah.
But after that, they traded a lot of their late picks, so they're definitely not relying on the draft right now. I think they
No.
realize their window is here, and they need to do that. And just taking a quick look, they don't have too much money coming off the books, so I'm not sure how much room exactly they would have without making another move down the line, like someone like an Alex Kerfoot
Yeah.
who makes $3.5 million. I mean, he's a good player, very good player. He adds a little bit different dynamic to that top six. But is he expendable at that price tag just based on the way that this team is built? And if so, then can they flip that into a very good defenseman? So it's a good question. And I'm honestly not as cap savvy as I once used to be when I was all invested into the ins and outs and dynamics of this league. The one concern I'll raise is Jake Muzzin's making $5.625 million for the next 2.5 seasons. Is that a contract that you could potentially find a way to flip? He's 32 years old right now.
Yeah. It's not
Like
good.
like Justin Hall, he has been playing some great hockey. Is that a contract that you can kind of flip and turn into someone who's more serviceable at that amount of money? Because I don't think he's playing up to his contract right now. And if he's not doing it in 2021, 2022, who's to say he can do it in 2023, 24? So I think they need to look for something like that where they can potentially package one or two of those guys and shoot for the stars, man. Like I like someone like a Hampus Lindholm. I like John Klingberg, of course. Those are two very elite defensemen. I'm not sure they'll get someone like that, but maybe someone on the Seattle Kraken who is in just a bad situation, like a Jamie Alexiak, actually the brother of Penny Alexiak, the Olympic swimmer. So um, it's going to be an interesting time because they're going to make at least one move,
Yeah.
and I want to see how big they swing this year because they have the potential to. I mean, of course, they got to get past the first round, but they have the potential to go all the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we're going to see them be conservative whatsoever. You bring up a good point. This is a win now type group. They're not going to be, looking to hold on to their draft picks. This is a squad that's moved their first rounders in 2019 and 2021. So I do expect the Leafs to make a big splash. I think a lot of people are. And yeah, we'll see what they can do to add to this group as they're, of course, all in. And it's make or break for the Leafs. I mean, this is the year, man. I feel like we say that every year during this run, but you get the feeling this is a team that they have to perform and at least you would think get to a conference final this year.
Yeah, I hope so. Like, I wouldn't say this is like the last year they have, but pressure's on. The pressure was on last year after losing to Montreal. I mean, right now it's shaping up that the Leafs are going to face one of Tampa or Florida in the first round, which is that's like an Eastern Conference final right there.
Just their luck.
So I wouldn't say it's do or die for the Leafs right now, especially with the how young this core is. But yeah, the clock is definitely ticking, and if they don't get past the first round, then maybe Kyle Dubas's internal clock there is ticking as well, and he'll be forced to make a move perhaps he didn't want to make this year or a few years ago.
That's what I could see happening. Obviously, if they don't win the cup this year, it's not do or die. But I do think if they fail to, get past the first round, like the worst case scenario, that would be it. I do see Dubas making a move to stir things up, a drastic move that maybe would not have come before. I mean, we heard rumors of it last offseason after they blew that lead to the Canadians. I think this would be the final straw of that core. Now, what could you do to move and transform that core? That remains to be seen. But I do think a major move would come if the Leafs would have another epic collapse or would fail to get past the first round, because that would just be simply unacceptable. This far into this experiment, you still can't have your team get past the first round. I know matchups is big, but I mean, you just look at last year's, they were a heavy favorite and they couldn't take advantage of that situation. So
Yeah, hopefully it's just not a repeat of last year. I don't think the Leafs fans can really endure something like that. But as I mentioned, like it's shaping up where the Leafs will have to face an elite team in the first round. So I wonder if that changes anybody's perspective here. And maybe it's not a bust if they go out in 7 games to the Tampa Bay Lightning. I mean, personally, I think it still would be.
yeah, I think so
But
too.
realistically, you're facing the two-time defending at Stanley Cup champions. You take them to game 7. Is that really a terrible thing? I
Yeah.
just feel like with history not on the Leaf side, it probably will be perceived that way.
I would almost welcome in that matchup. I know it seems scary on the surface, but you're taking on the defending champs. If you could potentially knock them out, it's green. It's clear ice ahead of you the rest of the way. So that would be a very intriguing first round playoff matchup.
And I think that's all we got to look forward to right now. Like the regular season is, I mean, could the Leafs win their division? Perhaps. I think we can talk about that on a later show as we will have some time with the All Star NBA All Star break coming up and some Leaf
Yeah.
off days. So we can definitely talk about that in the future. But that could be a prop bet that you guys want to throw down, a futures bet. But overall, this team right now, I mean, it's great that they're doing what they're doing in the regular season, but all that's going to matter is postseason. I think at this point
Yeah.
for the Leafs, I think they know that. I think fans obviously know that, and I think the rest of the league is on that narrative as well.
Yeah, we'll get to a lot of prop bets and interesting narratives like that, as Mike alluded to next week with the NBA going off for a few days with their All Star break. So yeah, we'll definitely put a lot of interesting things out there. We are now going to switch gears to the Raptors, who were not as fortunate as the Leafs. They got blown out, man. Like they made your best bet look like the worst bet last night. I have to say that
Yeah.
was brutal to watch. I don't know what happened to this team. They could not make a shot. I was raving on about Gary Trent Jr. all weekend long, and then he does that. I mean, OG couldn't hit a damn shot. Scotty Barnes was a non-factor. He's completely disappeared out there. Siakam got injured in his eye. This was after Jared Allen was named to the All-Star team over him.
Freddie
Yeah, it was
left the game
rough.
injured.
It was rough from start to finish. And you look at the Raptors, they just shot 30.5% from the floor and an abysmal 23.5% from three. And the Pelicans, they were just a complete opposite, 58% from the field, 45% from three. Credit CJ McCollum, man, the newest addition of the Pelicans. He was on fire. He had a big game. And the Raptors, they only had 8 assists all game, as opposed to the Pelicans 36. And we saw it out there. They were very stagnant with their offense. Guys were chucking up shots, a lot of ISO. It did not look like the free-flowing Raptors offense that we have seen since the start of the new year. So my question is to you, Mike. Was this just one of those games where minutes perhaps caught up to the Raptors and fatigue caught up to the Raptors? Or did you see something that legitimately concerns you about this team going forward?
I'd say a little bit of both. It was definitely just one of those games because I don't remember the last time really the Raptors have been blown out, let alone in that fashion, let alone to a team like the New Orleans Pelicans, which I mean they definitely look a lot better than I thought they would. I mean, of course they do when they're shooting 58.4% from the floor and 45.7% from three. And I think the biggest difference was the assists all game. I can't believe this. The Raptors only had 8 assists all game
Crazy.
from all of their players combined, while the Pelicans had 36. It's actually crazy that the Raptors kind of lost in that sort of fashion. I think just looking at some numbers here, The Raptors shot 18 more field goal attempts than New Orleans, 15 more free throw attempts than New Orleans, and lost by 30 points. That's that's insanely inefficient, first of all, because the way that New Orleans was shooting the basketball, obviously they don't need as many possessions, but if the Raptors are having more chances there, you assume that the game would at least be a little bit tighter. But this game was over from the start of the first quarter,
Yeah.
and there was no really bite back into the game. I think at one point they cut it to 5 in the second quarter, but never came closer than that. And it was a rough night all around because I had some prop bets going. One of them was Fred Van Vliet, and I took the over on his points props, which was, I believe, 20 and a half or 21 and a half. Freddie had 20 points after the third quarter. He didn't return to the game because of right knee soreness. So I finished 1 point or 2 points short of hitting that point prop because he left the game with right knee soreness. So
Brutal.
absolutely hated to see that. I did get 1 point prop right though. And that's because I had a hunch the big man would show up against his former team, and that was Jonas Valanciunas.
Yeah.
I took the over on his 16 and a half point prop, and he finished with 18. So thankfully he came at the end there and got a bucket, but he was a force inside once again against the Raptors. And this was what I was gonna allude to off the bat there is that's what I'm concerned about. Something we've talked about a lot is how do Raptors handle big men? And Nick Nurse came out and said after the game, it's something they're still evaluating. Like maybe they match up one of their bigger guys against their big men when they face someone like that. Because right now, when you're throwing five of your best players out there, it's not necessarily working in those types of matchups. I mean, Pelicans they had way more points in the paint than the Raptors do. I mean, that's probably a number you're gonna get when you lose by 30 points, but overall, it was an easy night for the Pelicans. I thought they moved the ball way too quickly. They penetrated way too quickly and broke down the Raptors way too easily. So, uh, yeah, just one of those nights. But I do have some cause for concern when going up against those big guys.
Yeah, we've seen it now in 2 games. Now, obviously, the Nuggets game was a lot closer, but we see how much of a difference it makes when you have a big that attracts that extra attention inside, who can dominate inside, how that leads to the other team having a lot of success. I mean, in that Nuggets game, a lot of Jokic's teammates had good looks from three, and the Nuggets did a great job of hitting the three ball. That's the reason why they're in that game till the very end, ultimately winning it. And then we saw last night. I mean, how many times were the Raptors broken down defensively? Guys like McCollum hitting good looks from three. And we're going to see if this theory holds true tomorrow night when the Raptors go up against another elite big in Karl Anthony Towns. Karl Anthony Towns is going to eat. He's going to have a big game. And we'll see if not having a true big to go up against them is going to cause yet another one of those games where the rest of the Wolves have a great game from 3-point range. So I agree with you. It's like whenever the Raptors do play a traditional big who is very skilled, it trickles down and just leads to a poor performance all around for this team. Now, I'm not going to hit the panic button or anything like that, but I'm waiting to see that game against the Timberwolves because, I mean, if the Raptors have a similar outing and they look defeated, then the All-Star break could not have come at a better time. But I still think you got to look at this positively. You look at their last, the last stretch of games. They've only lost 2 times, and one of those games they could have won. So I'm hoping this was more of all those minutes just catching up to them. They needed a break, and luckily they were able to take the entire fourth quarter off and give some of their starters some rest. But yeah, that was brutal to watch, man. The only other Raptor game that comes to mind that was as worse as watching that was the game against the Cavs in which they got blown out, but the Raptors had nobody playing.
Yeah.
That other than that, this was definitely the worst game to watch. I was like, what is going on right now? It was like the Raptors were playing the 2017 Golden State Warriors. Nothing was falling. Defense looked horrible. But let's talk about one thing that happened in this game in the blowout loss. Thad Young, he did make his Raptors debut. He finished the game with 4 points, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 turnover, was 2 for 5 from shooting in 12 minutes of play. What did you think of Thad Young's debut with the Raptors?
Uh, Well, let me provide some context to this first. So, speaking after his Raptors debut, Thad Young said he's still trying to get acclimated into the system. Uh, Biggest challenges have been doing it without any real practice time and learning multiple positions at once. And quote, he said, "You're trying to learn 5 positions in one day." End quote. So, also some more context there is the Spurs were in the middle of a road trip when Thaddeus Young got traded. So he's essentially been living out of a suitcase since they departed on that road trip. So a few weeks now, and it's been it's been busy because his wife and his brother have been busy packing, and he's just looking forward to sort of the All Star break to kind of get settled in. So let me provide that context before I say that I still believe he's kind of redundant on this team. Like I look at him when he came in, I'm like, he looks like 7 other players that they have on their team. I thought he did actually decent in his debut, with all
Yeah.
things considered. He provided a little bit of more mobility. Uh, he looks obviously like he's a really good player. I just still think that they have people who are capable of playing a similar role, perhaps not at the level that Thaddeus Young does, but they have someone like a Precious Achua, Chris Boucher, obviously OG, Scotty, Pascal, Delano Banton, whose minutes he actually ate last night, and I thought Banton was playing really well leading up to this game. So I just I don't know. I'm not thrilled about the move still.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the actual debut, it was overall solid. I mean, nothing too flashy around the floor, got a couple deflections, made some good reads, and he did at least, get a couple points. And that's a good thing you brought up. He still hasn't even been accustomed with this team. I mean, we got to give him at least a few games to get into the rhythm of the system, have some time to actually settle down, not live out of a suitcase, and be fully immersed with this team. So, yeah, again, the All Star break could not have come at a better time. But I do understand the concern that some people might have when they do look at a Thad Young and see that he does provide some of the same things as the other players on this team. But I just always go back to the notion of what else could you have gotten for Goran Dragic. And I look at this as at least you did get something for him. Thad Young could still provide some solid defense, some solid playmaking from off the bench. He's not a guy who's going to spark your offense. So it's better than nothing, but I do understand that, yeah, he's not going to be a guy that you can count on from off the bench to spark a run when your starters do sit. And I'm kind of looking at that second unit, and I'm curious to see if somebody's going to step up and be that true leader of that second unit, that guy who can rally the troops, get that second group going. And right now, I just don't see it from any one of those players. There's a lot of inconsistency from top to bottom, even from like a guy like Chris Boucher. I mean, he had that incredible run, but it's kind of, he has shown his tendencies of falling back a bit. Chua too. Sometimes he looks great. Sometimes he looks like he doesn't understand the system at all. You got Thad Young now into the mix. And Delano Banton, I still have my high hopes of him. Can he be that reliable playmaker that can make everybody around him better? We'll see as the season progresses. But yeah, right now, I think the issues are still there for this team. It's the lack of bench production. And of course, not having a true big that can go up against other bigs when they go up against teams like the Wolves, the Sixers, the Nuggets, etc.
Yeah, and that's kind of my issue with all of this is I'm not saying necessarily to go out against someone more quality than Thaddeus Young, but just positionally, can they just get a big man to just in case you need someone to throw a body on someone like a Jonas Valanciunas last night or a Carl Anthony Towns? They don't necessarily have someone like that they can rely on in the post. So maybe a position like that, even a floor spacer and a ball handler, if you wanted to kind of change it up a bit. Thaddeus Young doesn't do that at an elite level. They should have got someone who does a really good job at that. Instead, they got someone with a skill set I believe they already have.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I keep going back to. But let's give him a shot. Obviously, I thought he did decent in his debut, all things considered, and I want to see what he looks like after the All Star break because maybe there is something there that that we're missing, and he can provide that spark off the bench, which is much needed as Raptors still have the worst bench in the league right now.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely willing to give him a longer leash. We'll give him, a good sample size of a few games, and then we can assess his game more properly. But yeah, we'll see how the Raptors respond. They got one more game before the NBA All Star break. They're going to be off a week, so hopefully they can go into that one with a win. They're going to be taking on a really good Timberwolves team. That's not going to be an easy game. And of course, as mentioned before, they're going to be going up against another talented big, one of the best bigs, I think, in the league, in Karl Anthony Towns. All right, let's move on now to our best bet of the night. I keep on winning. I'm 19-7. Mike's
It's
15 and
crazy.
11. And yeah, let's see if we can both pick a winner tonight.
All right, so I am going to the pitch and gonna bet on some soccer.
I
Something
like
I don't
it.
know if we've done too much of that on this show, but there are some big UEFA Champions League matchups this afternoon,
That's right.
and namely PSG versus Real Madrid, which is a very, very enticing matchup for any football fan. Now, PSG, they're in some really good form. They've won four out of their last 5 games, haven't lost in their last 5 games. They're playing at home. They're going to get Neymar back today because Neymar was out for a little bit. Of course, you still have Kylian Mbappe up top, and then Lionel Messi, who absolutely loves playing against a team like Real Madrid. And Real Madrid's kind of taken a little bit of a step back from where they used to be. Of course, with the Ronaldo days and all of those superstars, they're kind of in this little bit of a rebuilding phase. So they're also struggling in form. I believe they've lost 3 out of their last 5 games, or they're winless at least in 4 out of their last 5. So with these two teams kind of trending in opposite directions, I'm going to take PSG to win the first leg today at home at minus 110. So I think that's some pretty decent value if you look at all the star power that PSG has.
Yeah, I'll totally be honest. I forgot that game was today. That's a massive matchup, man. UEFA Champions League is back. I love Champions League, so I'm definitely gonna keep my eyes on that game. And yeah, maybe I'll take your bet on that, man. Maybe I'll listen to your expertise here and bet on this game. For mine, I'm gonna stick with the association, which has been my bread and butter. I'm gonna go back to the well. I can already see Mike's reaction when I'm gonna say this. I'm going with the Grizzlies. They have been my sure-handed bet all season long. They're 4.5 point favorites on the road against the Pelicans, a team that just played last night. So I don't like that back-to-back factor for the Pelicans and the Grizzlies. They have been one of the surest bets on the road this season. This team finds different ways to win. John Morant, I think he's going to have a big game tonight. So yeah, I'm going to lay the points. I think the Grizzlies get it done on the road against the Pelicans, a team that just whooped the Raptors last night.
Yeah, I don't think the Pelicans are kind of going to repeat that performance. I feel like that was sort of a one off. And man, why fix what isn't broken, Luca? It keeps working for you, so why not? You're making some listeners on this show some good money if they're listening to your advice. And the Grizzlies, they're the best team in the NBA this year at covering that spread. So they're not a bad bet anytime you want to go with Memphis.
All right, we'll see if our bets cash in, but let us know what your thoughts are on the show and what bets you like tonight. But that will conclude another edition of Toronto Today here on the Parlay. We'll be back at it again tomorrow, talking Toronto sports and more. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.